Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Audit and Finance Standing Committee for November 25th, 2025. My name is Kathy Daigle-Gammon, Councillor for District 1, Waverly, Fall River, Musquodoboit Valley. We'll call the meeting to order at 1 p.m. And our land acknowledgement that the Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and the traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. Municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. We're supported today with our legislative assistant, Dorothy Maponga, our legal counsel, John Traves, and our chief financial officer, Jerry Blackwood. And we have some guests today as well. Welcome, Deputy Mayor Cottle and Councillor Steele. So item 1 on our agenda is the annual election of chair, and we'll invite Dorothy to facilitate the election of chair.
Thank you, Councillor. I would like to call for nominations for the chair of the committee.
I would like to nominate Kathy Daigle-Gammon for the position of chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gillis. Do we have any other nominations for the position of chair? Any other nominations for the position of chair? Thank you. Can we get a mover and a seconder to appoint Councillor Daigle-Gammon as the chair of the committee? Thank you. Oh, thank you, Councillor Morris. Seconded by Councillor Gillis. Congratulations, Councillor Daigle-Gammon. You're the chair.
Wish all elections that easy.
Thank you very much, colleagues. And now we'll go to the annual election of vice chair. Do we have any nominations for vice chair?
I nominate Councillor Jean Saint-Amand.
Councillor Saint-Amand, do you accept the nomination?
Sure. Second.
Are there any other nominations for the position of vice chair? And I think I asked one more time, are there any nominations for vice chair? So hearing none, Councillor Saint-Amand has accepted the nomination, and now we need a mover and a seconder to appoint Councillor Saint-Amand as vice chair. Councillor Gillis, seconded by Councillor Hensby. And we don't need to vote. Welcome to the vice chair position, Councillor Saint-Amand. So we'll now do the approval of the minutes of October 15th, 2025. Councillor Gillis, seconded by... Is there a seconder for the minutes? Councillor Hensby, thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Nay, opposed? Motion is carried. We'll now move to the approval of the order of business and approval of additions or deletions. Dorothy, do we have any additions or deletions?
No additions or deletions have been received by the clerk's office.
Thank you very much. So a motion to approve the order of business. Councillor Morse, seconded by Councillor Saint-Amand. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Opposed, nay. The motion is carried. Business arising out of the minutes, there are none. A call for declaration of conflict of interests. Seeing none, we'll move on. Motions of reconsideration, there are none. Motions of rescission, there are none. Consideration of deferred business, none. Notice of tabled matters, there are none. Madam Clerk, do we have any correspondence received?
No correspondence or petitions have been received by the clerk's office.
Thank you. And petitions?
No petitions have been received by the clerk's office.
And we also have no presentations. So now we move on to public participation. As of 4:30 on Monday, November 24th, there were no registered speakers for the meeting. But we will ask 3 times from the gallery. Is there anyone that would like to speak? For the second time, is there anyone from the gallery that would like to speak? For the third and final time, are there anyone from the gallery that would like to speak? So seeing none, we'll move on to item 12, information items brought forward. There are none. And we move now to reports, and we welcome our Auditor General for 13.1.1, which is the Recreation Program Planning Audit. So welcome Andrew Atherton, our Auditor General, and Tempto Foley will be providing a presentation and answering our questions.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Not going to lie, that was the hardest part of my presentation because every time I practiced, I said good morning, but we're in the afternoon now and I got it right. I have a couple of topics that I'm going to cover with you today. I'm going to start out with our audit of Parks and Recreation, then I'll talk about our work checking back on a few outstanding recommendations from 2 audits that were originally reported in 2021, followed up in 2023. Those are the Management of Accounts Payable, and the second audit was Transit Technology Project Management. Yeah, let me see if I can make this play. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to start with Parks and Rec. I'll give you a little clarity around what we found. First, I want to thank Tammy for her work on that, as well as all of the folks at Parks and Rec. This one was a little challenging for our office in that the original manager left the office partway through the audit, so Tammy had to pick it up, which was stressful for her as for the folks at Parks and Rec. So thanks to everybody involved for their efforts on that. So as is normal in an audit report, I'm going to cover some of the concerns that I have with the overall approach to recreation program planning. But I want to be clear that that doesn't mean there's not a lot of really good things happening. Before I talk about what I'd like to see improved, let's take a minute to discuss what exists and what is good in the current system. Now I'm going to tackle this piece from kind of the opposite order of what I talk about in the report. I'm going to start at the ground level. I don't think I have to tell any of you that HRM Parks and Rec provides a wide range of programming to the citizens of our municipality. Quick look through their website shows the breadth of those services, from skating to swimming, yoga to pickleball. Activities are offered at various facilities, from large multi-purpose venues like the Canada Games Centre or the Zatzman Sportsplex, to smaller rural facilities such as the Beachville Lakeside Timberley Community Centre or Carroll's Corner Community Centre. Parks and Rec truly covers our municipality from one end to the other. So when I talk later about concerns with how all that programming is planned and monitored, please remember I'm not saying nothing is happening. I simply have some improvements that could be made to how things work behind the scenes. Moving up to an overall look, HRM has a number of guiding plans and strategies in place. The Community Facility Master Plan, number 2, provides broad direction to staff to implement the renewal and enhancement of the municipality's recreational infrastructure. And beneath that are various strategies. There's a youth strategy, an aquatic strategy, a rural strategy, along with a senior services plan that's just currently in development. These documents are intended to guide the system with an eye to the big picture, and it's great that they exist. A lot of my concerns lie with connecting those two pieces, connecting what's happening on the ground with the big picture plans. Okay, with that, I'm going to start with that big picture. I'm going to look at the strategies in place. So this is something that I've seen, I'll say, more than once in my many years auditing government. Having strategies to govern how something works is a wonderful start, but if we don't actively monitor to ensure they are being implemented, and that they are achieving their intended outcomes, they risk becoming little more than paper collecting dust on a shelf. Management told us that staff consider the strategies as part of their everyday work, but there is no documentation to show what was done and no formal approach staff are expected to follow. With such an ad hoc approach, management cannot be certain that all of the programming we just talked about is achieving what was intended or is intended in the strategies. Management told us they monitor these strategies through the annual business plans, but we found only occasional and I'll say very high-level references to them. We found no formal evaluation comparing program outcomes with strategic objectives, and simply put, the level of monitoring is not close to what was expected. So we are recommending a more formal evaluation of these various strategies to ensure they are being implemented and achieving their goals. Only with that level of oversight can we get the full benefit out of those documents. So I mentioned earlier all the programming in place across HRM, but I can't emphasize it enough that Parks and Rec offers a lot of things to a lot of people. Regardless of the size of facility, how it is managed, either by HRM staff or third parties, or the nature of the programming, we found a consistent hands-off approach by the Parks and Rec business unit. They allow the local recreation coordinator or facility leadership to decide what is offered, when, and how often at each local recreation facility. Now, on the surface, that makes perfect sense. The folks that run the local gym or rink or pool are best positioned to know what their local community wants. I'm not for a second suggesting that should change. Local planning for local users makes sense. But we do have a couple of concerns. First up, there's no process for monitoring that planning to ensure consistency across the municipality. We talked with various local recreation coordinators to try and learn how they complete planning and heard about a number of good processes, including reviewing what is offered at non-HRM facilities in the area to avoid duplication, taking suggestions from all the folks that are coming into their facility, and simply monitoring demand and waitlist information for existing programs to see what's popular and what maybe needs more or what needs less. The problem we found with the planning is that it's not documented. There's no formal process explaining how to complete it. So each local coordinator is following their own approach and may or may not use some of those good approaches I just mentioned. Or perhaps they've got a wonderful approach that they're using in Beachville Lakeside Timberlea and nobody else knows about it. So without some form or plan or process, outlining what is expected, it becomes difficult to ensure consistent approaches are used at facilities across the municipality. So this could mean something is missed or good ideas aren't shared. One other risk that it poses is it's very challenging for a new coordinator to come in and know how to get started because there's just nothing there to guide them. So we've recommended implementation of a consistent process to ensure programming meets community needs and aligns with HRM's strategic goals. This doesn't have to be prescriptive, but should at least identify good practices and an expected level of documentation to allow management to understand how decisions were made and for a new staff member to pick up the process if necessary. Okay, moving along. Similar to the lack of oversight around planning, we found that the Parks and Rec business unit is not adequately involved in the evaluation of programming outcomes to see whether expected results were achieved. Again, similar to planning, it's reasonable that local staff would be responsible for the detailed monitoring, but management needs a process beyond informal and sporadic meetings to ensure it is happening. This ties closely to the earlier discussion around evaluation of strategies, but would also go a little bit deeper to help ensure that local management is checking that programming is meeting local expectations. We've recommended a periodic assessment of programming against program objectives. So HRM uses a few different models to offer recreation to citizens. Many are offered at HRM owned and operated facilities, while others involve third parties running the facilities. Those third-party facilities are what I want to talk about now. We found that the facility boards for both large and small locations make the final call on what is offered with little direct input from HRM. Similar to what I said earlier with HRM-owned facilities, there's a logic to that approach. Whether it's the volunteer board of a small rec center in rural HRM or the board of a large multi-use facility, the folks running these centers should have a good handle on what is in demand in their community. And again, we're not suggesting that that should be changed. We are recommending that HRM get more involved in the monitoring and evaluation of programming offered at facilities managed by third parties. In order to ensure that the goals associated with broader strategies are being achieved, we believe the Parks and Rec business unit needs to start assessing how well the programming offered at all rec locations, including those managed by third parties, is achieving the big picture goals in its strategy. Now, we also noted some concerns with the information provided under these agreements. There are requirements for both sides, including HRM providing a listing of expected programs to the multi-district facilities, along with various operational and financial reports from the facilities back to HRM. And we found a lot of these were not happening, they were not happening consistently, or they were happening not in a timely manner. And that leads us to question the value that's being obtained from those, and we've recommended Parks and Rec assess what is needed for appropriate oversight and monitoring, and then make sure they're getting it or giving it, as the case may be. Okay, that is all I have for Parks and Rec. You can see that management have agreed to all 5 of our recommendations, and I am hopeful that we will see them implemented before we return for follow-up sometime probably in 2027. Now, before we get to questions on that, I'd like to quickly run through our follow-up report. So this report was looking at, this is our second follow-up, looking back at 3 recommendations that were outstanding from 2 audits that had originally been followed up in 2023. I'll start with the 1 recommendation remaining from our audit of the management of accounts payable. As you can see, Finance and Asset Management have yet to implement their final recommendation. They had previously completed 3 of the original 4 recommendations, and I firmly believe that performance measures will help them manage their business and have the potential to improve performance, and I look forward to them completing that final recommendation soon. As we've already looked at this twice, I'm going to wait on management to reach out to my office to confirm that they have addressed that recommendation before I schedule any further follow-up. So moving along to our last piece, you can see that management have addressed 1 of the 2 outstanding recommendations from our audit of transit technology project management. I'm pleased that they've made the step to consider some cost-benefit analysis when deciding whether to manage projects internally or externally. That brings them to 3 of 4 original recommendations complete. The remaining recommendation relates to the use of forecasts and having adequate support for budget figures. Now, my office is currently just finishing up planning, starting fieldwork of an audit that's focusing directly on that topic across the municipality, so I'm going to wait for the results of that audit before determining whether there is value in us revisiting this recommendation in the future. That is all I have to say. Thanks for taking the time to listen to me this afternoon. At this point, I can take any questions you may have on either of these or any of those 3 topics, or we can slide aside and allow you to ask questions of management.
Thank you very much, Andrew. So maybe we'll start with questions first on the recreation programming planning audit. Councillor Cleary?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question around, in your audit report for the rec programming, you mentioned the email policy and how it's frustrated for that audit, but it was also frustrating now for several other projects you're working on. Can you describe that? And I'll ask management after about our policy and the implications related to records retention. But how has it impacted this particular audit or other projects you're working on? Because this is a recently new thing in the last year or so. And one of the instructions that we had as counselors was, if you have email records that you want to keep, you need to put them in another folder so that it's not your deleted folder, because those are getting automatically deleted. So how often are you running into this? What impact is it having?
How often? I would say every audit that we've done since the policy came in. How often within those audits? I can't say, it's not an uncommon occurrence. What's happening is we're looking for information and somebody says, well, we have, I got the approval for that in an email, or I must have a record of that in my email, but then they go and they haven't followed your approach, Councillor Cleary, to move things into working folders so that they don't lose it, and it doesn't exist. When we pick an audit period, it usually extends back roughly 2 years from when we're doing our planning, and then we're doing our field work for another 3 to 6 months after that. So we very easily go outside of that 2-year window. We have yet to encounter a situation where we can't conclude on what we want to do, what we're looking for, but it is making it more difficult when the information hasn't been retained. And I understand there will be some situations where staff are going to say, wow, I never thought anybody would ask me that question. Why would I have kept that email? And I'm okay if it's an occasional occurrence, but it keeps coming up. So that's why I mentioned it in the report. And I'll continue to include that in reports when it comes up so that we can flag it for you folks and management to consider. Is there an adjustment? Is there further education? What's the situation that needs to be addressed?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cleary. Councillor Hensby?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And the email retention for 2 years, I still find that very frustrating and stuff, and I really think we should reevaluate that policy on that. But in my particular district, I think I have at least 9 third-party agreements for my community facilities in my particular area, and I'm always finding that there's no formal connection between the counselor and the department and the staff. I have to initiate the discussions with the staff or with the community group organizations. I don't get any reports in regards to the plan for the year or the budget amounts for the year. So I think there should be more of a formalized approach that the counselor should be at least ex officio advised of what the agreements are or what the programming policies might be and stuff, because a lot of the questions and complaints that come from citizens come to me and they expect me to fix it. But if I don't know what the program is, how can I fix it? So I'm just kind of curious if there's any, from your experience, has been any disconnect there between the field work versus the representatives for the area.
So we wouldn't have looked at the communications with counselors. We were looking at how it was planned, not how it was communicated to you folks. I think that I would have to leave that one on your plate to take it up with the CAO and figure out what sort of communication process you guys want to have with Parks and Rec at that level. It's a little beyond what we were looking at, sorry.
And with the third-party agreements, how you were talking about the need for better reporting in regards to registration number-wise or expenditure resources. I'm just kind of curious of when you say try to have more concise information with third-party agreements. What do you really mean by that?
So on that one, there were a number of things listed in the agreements, quite a number of things. Many of them were not being provided. And anytime I see that, I see information that's supposed to be provided and hasn't been, I don't like to just say, well, you need to collect it because you have it in your agreements. My perspective there is, well, if you're not getting it and you feel comfortable with what's happening, then maybe it shouldn't be in that agreement to begin with. So that's why my recommendation is to go back to Parks and Rec and say, listen, figure out what you need. If you need quarterly financial reports, then you have to start getting them. If you don't need them, then take it out of the agreement so that you're not asking for something that you aren't even going to look at if it's provided. I don't want to get prescriptive on what reporting Parks and Rec needs to provide appropriate monitoring and oversight. That's a management decision to decide, here's what I need, and we make sure we get it. So I've put that back to management to let them decide what's relevant, what's pertinent, and to start to collect it.
My understanding, there are also the third-party agreements were given standardized reporting platforms in regards to their expenditures and stuff. Have you found was that being consistently used by all 3 third-party users? Like, was a certain spreadsheet format, or the case may be, there were certain things that were.
Yeah, we found all of the reporting, including the financial reporting, was inconsistent. Is probably the best description. Lots of it was there, lots of it was late. Some of it wasn't there. So there was no clear pattern in the reporting other than that it was inconsistent.
Okay. My last question in regards to recreation registration. I think we just brought on a new registration program recently. I wasn't sure how many of our third-party facilities are connected with that registration program, so I wasn't sure if there was any review of that or not.
We were aware of the new program, but it was outside the scope of what we were looking at. So I don't know. Management would be able to fill you in on whether all those third-party folks are connected with that or not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hensby. Deputy Mayor Cuddle.
Oh, thank you. I'm willing to wait if members of committee want to go first. You're okay?
I was deferring to the Deputy Mayor, so you know.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, thank you for this report. My questions were in line with Councillor Hensby, particularly around the facilities that are managed by third parties. And, I know that throughout the municipality, the scope of the work that's managed by those third parties varies greatly. Like, some budgets are rather small and some are quite large, over $1 million, and some are, in the less than $100,000. So there's a big variety there. So one of my concerns is that I think there is a need for better reporting and evaluation of the programs being delivered in these facilities, 100%. But is there any consideration given to differing reporting formats depending on the size and the scope of the programming happening in those facilities?
Thank you for the question and congratulations on your new role. Again, I'm going to put it back to management to make that final decision, but I think I'd say absolutely that not all those third parties have quite a range of size and scope, and the same expectations presumably won't work for all of them. But ultimately, it is on management to figure out what do they need. I do believe that it's not just the reporting that needs to be addressed. It's that monitoring as well to ensure that Parks and Rec is seeing that we have a consistent approach across the municipality. Each individual community is going to have its own nuance, absolutely. But there are those strategies in the CFMP2 that I talked about that are intended to set the tone for the entire municipality. And there's a level of oversight that can be put in place to help ensure that that's happening.
What do you think is at the root of this not happening? Like, why do you think it isn't happening?
Don't have audit evidence on that, so it's hard for me to answer. I mean, at the end of the day, I think that there's a lot of confidence put in the local leadership for local recreation, that people want to have their own responsibility. They want to offer what their community needs. I don't know that that's what's happening. My focus is more on what I would like to see happening, and that's where the recommendations try to take us.
Right. And in terms of the local communities determining what's needed, is there any evidence to suggest that that's what needed? Like, what's needed are there community surveys? Like, is there any process for evaluating community needs around recreation and a review?
There is
HRM, like looking into this?
There's lots of sporadic meetings, discussions, or some evaluations. What we're looking for is a consistent approach, so that instead of happening in pockets or in places or happening this year and not for 3 years, that there's a clear plan of how are we going to do this, what's it going to look like, and that we will know from Musquodoboit to Hubbards that it's happening all across the municipality, and that we're start to get a more consistent approach, and that we ensure that the good strategic documents that we have that are supposed to set that tone, that you folks have a little more involvement in, presumably at that level, that's those documents, those intended approaches are happening throughout the municipality.
Thank you. Your findings really reflect what my experience has been. My relationship with my third-party managed facilities varies greatly depending on the board and the people working in the facilities. That's in regards to communication and contact and support. There doesn't seem to be a consistent approach, and it's quite frustrating too for the communities where these facilities are located. Having these assets out there, HRM assets out there, it's an amazing opportunity for us to deliver more equitable programming across the municipality. But to your point, if the structure's not in place to ensure that's happening, it leaves some communities in quite a deficit. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cuddle. Vice Chair Saint-Amand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for this, Andrew. It sounds like when you're repeatedly hitting on the consistency or the lack thereof, I think one of the things that immediately comes to mind is that is part of the continuous improvement opportunity that we have within the municipality. And as I was reading through, particularly around this idea of local programming that is happening, which certainly benefits the local community with that localized expertise in the programming that suits the audience that is served by a particular facility. There's an upside and a downside to that I was immediately drawn to. Because like if we're absent documentation that provides for an evaluative framework for how this localized programming is occurring, then to me it means that there's also paired with that unidentified opportunities for improvement, potentially a risk of resource allocation opportunities being missed, because we have learning that we could be doing in one facility that we might choose to transpose and transport across the municipality to other facilities were we to identify the success of one given program in a way that makes it repeatable for another audience, potentially even with little tweaks along the way. And so not only does that represent a little bit of a gap for us, but it also potentially, anyway, ekes into an area of inequity, because we've got these audiences that may be well served by a program that's been established in one facility versus another. And because we don't have the capacity to evaluate it and therefore identify an opportunity to bring it to another facility, and hopefully it's not so uniquely tied to the person delivering the program that it can be brought to another facility. But those are two aspects of that continuous improvement piece that I'd like to find a way to address. Is it that we need a framework for the establishment of these programs specifically, coupled with evaluation on an ongoing basis of the success of these programs? Where does the weakness lie that we can plug first in order to better achieve our objectives, irrespective of whether it's entirely strategically aligned? If we're just looking at this program really worked well and was very well received by our audience, how do we find a way to capitalize on this elsewhere?
I think the biggest thing is just it's the Parks and Rec business unit taking a more active hand in the evaluation and the monitoring. Whether that's, and I shouldn't say active in the evaluation. The evaluation is still largely going to be done at the local level, but it's collecting that information, it's collating that information, so that there's somebody outside of the facility who can identify that, wow, that program, that's great. That was a new idea that came to the table 2 years ago, and it's just flourishing. So that we can make sure that gets picked up and gets carried across the municipality if it's applicable elsewhere. It may not be, but right now I think there's a little bit of a gap where that may well happen right now, because there is lots of ad hoc conversations. It's not that the Parks and Rec business unit have no communication with these facilities. They're out there talking a lot. They are familiar with them, but it's going to be you're going to be reliant on a person who's there to come back to head office, as it were, and say, listen, this is what's happening out in Timberley. We got to look at doing this elsewhere, as opposed to a little more formal process where it's being pulled together and they're having those conversations regularly.
Right. Would that gap be any more pronounced or less pronounced when comparing facilities that we run versus multi-district facilities that are run by third parties?
I don't think there's a significant difference there. The third-party facilities do have, I can't remember the job title, but there is a representative from Parks and Rec that is in regular contact with them. So I think that there's a similar gap on both sides.
Mm-hmm. Okay, terrific. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair St. Amand. Councillor Morse.
Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. And thanks for the report, Andrew and team. I'm wondering if you interviewed the staff at the third-party facilities at all about this. And the reason I'm asking is whether they're missing certain IT supports that would help them have better coordination with HRM.
We did not interview the third-party employees. We interviewed the recreation coordinators that were working with them, but we didn't actually go talk to the folks that were not HRM employees.
Okay, so you didn't hear about any concerns from the other side of the equation about...
Specific concerns. It wasn't a question we were asking, so I'm not saying that they don't have those concerns, but we didn't hear of those concerns.
Okay. And having had a little bit of experience with one of the third-party facilities, I'm wondering how HRM Parks and Rec would compel volunteer boards and the staff working for volunteer boards when there's no direct management structure or oversight.
I keep turning it off. That would come down to the agreements that they sign with those boards, and what expectations and requirements are included in the agreements.
But in terms of fulfilling those agreements and oversight to make sure it's happening, if there's no, employer-employee relationship, then how would HRM compel people? And it seems to be a gap that we have.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on what HRM is providing. If there's funding associated with it, then there's your compelling approach. That I think that's what it's whatever. There's give and take in those agreements. This is what HRM provides. This is what the volunteer board provides, and that's where the ability to compel lies. Is what do you put in there as your carrots and your sticks, and then how you use them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Councillor Gillis.
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, guys, for the report. Just a question. So we have the jurisdiction oversight to audit third-party run facilities. Have we ever audited the third-party, like boards and facilities?
Not that I am aware of. I think, as you say, we would have the ability if we wanted to do that. In this case, we chose to focus our work on the Parks and Rec business unit and their role. It might also come down to the answer I just gave Councillor Morris. It might come down a little bit to the agreements and what's in there. But generally speaking, if there's money flowing to them, then my office would be able to go there if we decided that was where we wanted to focus our attention.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm just thinking, I mean, is that something we can add going forward in the future? I mean, if we're giving public money to third-party facilities, I mean, we should know what they're doing with that public money.
Absolutely. I agree with you on that front. We won't be doing any further auditing in this area in the immediate future.
Yep.
But it's certainly something that you could ask for further information or as you saw fit.
Would there be an additional cost to your group for that?
I mean, there wouldn't be an additional. The cost would be if we did that work, we don't do other work.
Right.
Because we have a very small team,
Right.
and a very large municipality with lots of areas that we would like to look at. And so at any point, and I've said this to all of you many times, if you have suggestions or thoughts, please feel free to share them with me, and we will consider how that balances out with everything else.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gillis. Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for allowing me to be here today. Thank you for the report. I have a question, and it's really, I think it might be a yes or no answer, really. In terms of the report, essentially, it appears that we don't know if we have the same level of consistent service across HRM. We know that the recreation coordinators have a lot of latitude to adjust what they offer based on their perception of the needs of the community. But what I'm curious about and what I hear about from residents sometimes is that there are gaps in services. For example, certain communities don't have the same services, they don't have the same programming, I'll use for example for seniors available. And did the audit identify that, or identify perhaps the potential for that because of the lack of oversight? I'm trying to understand this gap in this perception of gap in services, and it could just be purely communication, but I'm wondering if the audit was instructive in that area.
Absolutely, we identified the potential for those gaps, for those differences. I will say that there will be those sort of gaps and differences. There are going to be different things. And as much as I stressed how much Parks and Rec offers, I'll also acknowledge it's not going to be possible for them to offer everything for everyone. So I think you will all end up getting calls that, why don't we have fill in the blank offered at my facility? And there's just no way for them to do everything for everyone. But yes, the audit did identify that as a potential gap, and that's where we're going with trying to have a little bit more monitoring, evaluation, oversight so that we know what's happening, and we're making relatively consistent decisions. Now, even with all of that, there's still going to be, I'm going to call them perceived gaps from the community's perspective. There are going to be things that people in the community would like to see that aren't able to be offered for any number of reasons in their local facility. So this isn't, if management implements the kind of the recommendations we've made, this isn't going to completely end all of the phone calls that you folks get saying, why don't they offer this? That's still going to happen because we can't be everything for everyone.
And in terms of areas being covered by recreation coordinators, not all parts of HRM are covered by recreation coordinators, for example, or it's not obvious to me that that is occurring. Did you notice any difference in, I guess, services that are available in that respect?
Not any specific differences, but we weren't going down into the implementation of the
Sure.
programming. We kept it at a planning
Management level,
Yeah,
yeah.
so we were looking at how they're organizing and planning this. We didn't go down and see, okay, let's compare what's happening in this community to this community.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Steele. Members of the committee, now if you have any questions around the 2021 audits, managements of accounts payable and transit technology project management, we could go to that now if you have any questions. Councillor Cleary, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think you might have mentioned this a little bit, but I'm trying to find the part of the audit follow-up here. When I look at those tables, by the way, whoever get the graphic of the thumbs down, that's awesome. I like that. You had the sort of X and the check mark for, not complete, completed. But my concern was with the management of accounts payable. And that was recommendation number 4. And the status was simply management doesn't intend to implement it. Can you speak a little bit more to that? Because that's going to be something I'm trying to figure out with management. What was the communication to you? Was it simply, yeah, we're not doing it? Like, did they not agree to that recommendation when you first made it to them?
So I'm just going to clarify on that one. You're looking at the original version that we sent out last week. Subsequently, I met with the CAO, and he was unaware of the original position of do not intend to implement, and that has now changed to simply not complete with the intention to implement.
Okay.
And yes, they did agree to the recommendation originally.
Yeah. I don't have an updated report, so this is the only one I have. So thank you for clarifying that. So how does that, I guess I'll have to follow up with management, but I mean, in terms of why did it have to be corrected? What was the communication that you had that indicated they weren't going to, and now why do we have the CAO saying, well, no, we're going to do that? Any insight into that before I talk to management?
I think you'd have to talk to management. I mean, my team worked with the management within the accounts payable group, and their indication was that they didn't feel that this was something that they wanted to do. When I talked to the CAO, he felt that this was something that should be done, could be done, was reasonable to do.
Okay. I see Mr. Harley on the front of his seat behind you, so I'll wait for that.
Thank you, Andrew. Also, our CFO has a comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jared Blackwood, CFO. So I'll ask Dave to come up if he wants to comment on that. But we did provide KPIs, per the what was recommended. I think there might have been a little bit of a difference of professional opinion with respect to setting targets. So I'll just ask Dave to speak to it.
Thanks, Jerry. So Dave Harley, Director of Financial Management and Operations. So yes, we did agree to that recommendation, and we actually did take steps to implement that recommendation. So we have brought forward a couple of KPIs. They're being measured on a regular basis. We're reporting them within our management team and keeping an eye on what's coming forward with those. What happened with that one is we felt that the KPIs that we had set up, where this audit was very strict on its interpretation of it's an audit of accounts payable and not a procure to pay process, we didn't feel that it was fair to set certain targets within our accounts payable group that would be impacted by efforts by people not within our accounts payable. So we didn't feel that it was necessary to set a target that wouldn't be realistic for them to meet based on work that happened outside of our group. That was one of the reasons why we didn't set a KPI on one of them. Another one was what we were actually measuring was one. It's very specific in terms of the discounts that we get offered by vendors for making payments ahead of schedule. And with that one, we would investigate any occurrence where we didn't actually take advantage of that. So again, we didn't feel it was necessary to set a target So our interpretation of that was we'd actually completed our this recommendation with some back and forth with the AG's office. They felt it was incomplete because we hadn't set targets, and that was a very specific part of their recommendation. So now it's we're going to negotiate on how we move forward with this with these specific recommendations. So,
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Cleary. Is that sufficient? Yes. Okay, thanks. Councillor Morse.
Thank you. Sorry, just check my notes here. Yeah, I just wondered if you could say a little bit more about the need for transit to use better forecasting and more support for their budgets. That might impact us shortly on as we're in the budget season.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot more I can say than what you just said. That I really think that forecasts and having fully supported budgets for any of these projects is it's a must from my perspective. I wasn't here for the original audit, so I'm not fully aware of how this worked, but I do believe that that's a pretty basic management approach that needs to be done. And like I said, we're doing an audit, an independent audit of the capital budgeting across HRM that we're just getting started now. And that largely is going to focus on the support that exists behind the budgets, so that we can see that what comes to you folks as you're doing your budget deliberations, that there is good evidence behind that. I recognize that in your positions, you don't have the time to be digging down into the budgets. You need to know that what's provided to you is fully supported and accurate, and then you're going to make your decisions based on priorities. So we're going to be looking to see what is in behind that and what supports it.
So this is mainly related to capital projects that with transit in terms of their estimates and year-over-year budgets and that sort of thing?
Yes, this was a project management audit, and that's the same as what we're going to be looking at is the capital budget side of your budgets is what we're looking at now, not the operating budget, just capital.
So an example would be if they were enlarging Ragged Lake, they didn't have necessarily, they had some gaps in the numbers for that project. Is that an example?
It could be. I mean, I believe this one focused a little bit more on technology, but in an expansion of Ragged Lake, presumably there's also some technology components that may be factored in there.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. Vice Chair St. Amand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think you'll find my question is related. When I think about the technology side of things as it's implemented within Halifax Transit, I have to imagine that there's a component of that that's coming from third parties. I mean, they wouldn't all be internal projects, would they? So is it that we are lacking in these third-party estimates of what a particular technology requirement will entail?
you're getting a little bit outside of my comfort zone, but I would presume that when we were looking at transit technology project management, we were looking at any transit technology projects within transit, whether internal or external. You'll note the other recommendation did refer a little bit to that. It talked about the use of internal versus external project management for them. So that's something that was obviously in scope, and I would presume yes. I will double check that, and if that's not the case, I will let you know. But I would expect that yes, everything in and out, inside and outside, were all part of the scope.
I mean, to your point, we don't want to second guess budgets that are presented to us. We want to know that they're well supported with adequate documentation. And so, you know, when we're talking about budgets that are brought forward on a subject matter basis or on a business unit basis altogether, you know, we want to make sure that there is sufficient documentation so that the numbers that are being presented are extremely well supported. And so I guess what I'm asking is, how would a budget be prepared without adequate support? Where would those numbers come from? I mean, is it just all going by feel if they don't have a third-party contractor or an industry expert telling them how much system XYZ is going to cost?
Might suggest you were listening into some of my conversations with my team.
I'm just imagining the same scenario.
Right. I don't understand it. Obviously, there's a lot more nuance. It's not as simple as that.
Right.
But that, as I said, that is what I want, what we're focusing our current or just about to start audit on, is getting that information. And I'll have a better answer for you when we can get through that audit, and we can come back and give you a little more detail on it in 6 or 8 months' time.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair St. Amand. So see no other names on the list. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. Do I get to say Timmy? Thank you very much for your work. We appreciate it. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 13.2.1, which is the proposed 26 meeting schedule. If you would like to read out that motion, Councillor Hensby, that would be great.
That the Audit and Finance Standing Committee approve the proposed 2026 Audit and Finance Standing Committee meeting schedules outlined in the staff memorandum.
Seconded by Councillor St. Amand, I think I saw. Yes. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye, raising your hand. Opposed, nay. Motion is carried. Move on to 13.2.2, which is Administrative Order 10, the Partial Tax Exemption Administrative Order and Land Titles Clarification Act for Tax Relief. Excuse me, there's no presentation for the report, but Caitlin Gilbert, Supervision of Collections, is available to answer any questions. Would a member like to put this on the board or on the floor? Thank you, Councillor Hensby.
The motion is that the Audit and Finance Standing Committee recommend Halifax Regional Council 1 discharge the property taxes owed by applicant 1 as defined in the staff report dated August 13, 2025 for the amount of $12,252.01. And 2, discharge the property taxes owed by applicant 2 as defined in the staff report dated August 13, 2025 for the amount of $5,892.27.
Seconder, Councillor Gillis. Thank you. Any comment, Councillor Hensby?
Being the past representative for the area, I know there's been a long file in regards to trying to get some of these properties titles quieted, and having these outstanding tax bills and stuff, it was very difficult to determine who would be the one responsible for them. But now with this, we would have an exact property owner for future ongoing billings.
Thank you. I see no names on the list. Question? Question has been called. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Opposed, nay. The motion is carried. Thank you. 13.2.3 is request for financial support for the purchase of 6-unit building for use as an affordable housing by Rooted Community Development Partners. Now, there is no presentation with this report, but Dave Patterson, Principal Planner, Alexander Wilson, Planner 2, and Aaron Murnahan, Manager of Housing Accelerator Fund, are available to ask any questions. Would a councillor like to put the motion on the floor? Councillor Cleary, thank you.
So I'll move that the Audit and Finance Standing Committee recommend that Halifax Regional Council, 1, refuse the request by Rooted Community Development Partners for a one-time grant to support the acquisition of a 6-unit building in Spryfield, and 2, direct staff following the forthcoming housing strategy to explore options to support acquisitions for the use of as affordable housing.
Seconder? Seconded by Councillor St. Amand. Councillor Cleary.
So the report sort of outlines the changes that we've made to the program and the rationale, and it's hard to, as much as we want to support everything, but maybe staff could just talk about kind of the supports we are providing for affordable housing and what they look like now, and how this kind of falls into this one-off category.
Thank you for the question through the chair. Dave Patterson with the Housing Accelerator Fund program in Regional and Community Planning. I just want to paraphrase the question. I wanted to make sure I caught it from the back. Your question was basically, how do we manage one-off contribution agreement requests outside
Well, and
of
describe the
programs?
evolution too of our funding for affordable housing, how it's changed over the last couple of years.
Certainly.
In particular.
Yeah, certainly. So going back to, the HGP was first brought forward in 2021 through the center plan. It's evolved quite a few times since then. And in the summer, council approved changes to the administrative order. And that was the result of our work through the Housing Accelerator Fund and engagement with community housing providers to expand and improve the program. We've had lots of experiences in the last 5 years of administering the program. In the context of the current report, which is looking at acquisitions have always presented a lot of challenges for the program, essentially because real estate transactions and a grant program tend not to have a timing that works well with one another. The applications don't tend to line up. So as described in the report, there's 2 cases where council has funded acquisitions, one through a standalone one-off request and one through the HGP. So right now we're working on an affordable housing strategy, and we're looking to really dig into this a little bit better on how we support this. But there's a lot of challenges, and we recognize that there's some gaps in the programs. But our latest work on the grant program landed at supplying a grant equivalent to the deed transfer tax as a relatively consistent level of funding for these projects.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Cleary. Thank you, Dave. Councillor Morse.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just wondering if you could say when you expect the housing strategy to be available to council. I think it's some time away. And what concerns you have, if there's certain types of precedents that might be set by this financial support for this building. And I guess you sort of said that sometimes the timing doesn't line up. My understanding is this is a building that's in very good condition and it's missing middle, and so it's kind of a rare property. And I'm wondering how critical this funding, if you have a sense of that, is to securing this building for affordable housing.
Thank you, Councillor, through the chair. Your first question on the timing for the affordable housing strategy.
Yes. Yeah.
We are looking to bring that through CPED in the spring, and to bring that to council no later than October 2026. So we're currently engaging community, engaging our partners in CMHC and the province as well to understand what that can contain and what changes need to be implemented through that strategy. So that's the broad timeline for that work. And then your second question was on the project itself and the uniqueness of
I was asking about whether there's what concerns you have and the team has about setting
About
a precedent with this
yes.
one.
Well, the main concerns that we've put forward in the report is the transparency around this process and the fairness of it. So the grant program does have a set administrative order that's public in terms of how projects are evaluated. We're also always within housing. We're sort of mindful of the various jurisdictions and the number of programs, including those that are outlined in this report from other levels of government that support affordable housing acquisitions. And we're generally concerned about cases where other levels of government have funding programs in place. We want to make sure that we're filling the gaps between them and supporting those programs where it's appropriate, and doing so in a way that's financially sustainable and effective. This project itself is we're not sure about the latest with Rooted and where they are in their acquisition, but it is a middle size, a 6-unit building. We've seen more of these acquisitions also in the larger format, and that's, I think, a challenge that we've identified is how to support sort of more the missing middle scale of affordable housing, which is a bit of a gap we've recognized in the programs.
So we have a gap, and they applied because I guess they feel they needed the funding to secure this purchase. So
Yeah.
if we have a gap and they applied, then it seems like perhaps they're showing us the way that we may go in the future with the housing strategy. Is that a fair comment, or?
It is a fair comment. Yeah, it's a fair comment that it's challenging to find funding for projects at this scale.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Deputy Mayor Cuddle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As some of my colleagues may have guessed, this is the reason I'm actually here today. So a couple of things I want to note in the report. One is that Spryfield, which has a high proportion of affordable housing units, has experienced a pronounced decrease in affordable private market units between 2016 and 2021. This is corresponded with factors such as building age and need for repair and turnover in building ownership. Really since being elected in 2020, I have witnessed similar sized buildings, kind of the 6 to 9 unit buildings being sold and bought, renovictions taking place, those units being flipped over, and now having a drastic increase in rent. At the same time, through the Housing Accelerator Fund, we approved about 26 multi-unit projects in Spryfield alone, which is more than all the other half projects in the municipality added up. It's a significant transformation, and none of those buildings have dedicated affordable housing in them. I've been witnessing over the last few months older buildings, many of them that might have housed 2, 3, 4 units, being torn down, and I now have vacant lots. This continued loss of affordable housing stock is an issue in my community, and one that I hear about regularly. I just want to note that we did give $300,000 to a project in Dartmouth for a similar sized building. And what I would like to ask the Audit and Finance Committee to do is to turn down the staff recommendation and accept alternative 1 in the staff report to allow this one-off grant. There's so many factors that are playing into this situation. And even though, we might get a housing strategy back in a year, that doesn't mean that program is going to be up and running in a year. That just means a report comes back. Then we have to actualize what that program looks like, figure out its funding, and stand it up. It could be a lot longer than a year. We've been looking at having an affordable housing density bonusing program outside the regional center. That hasn't got liftoff, and none of those Housing Accelerator Fund projects are really contributing to a fund that sees reinvestment back into affordable housing in the communities that are benefiting from that significant lift that we've given through zoning. So, I appreciate the precedents. We do have the precedent. We have done this before. This is a small ask. The deed transfer tax amount wouldn't be enough to fill the gap to help Rooted make this acquisition. So it needs more. I mean, we have a program, but the program's not effective if it doesn't meet the needs of the not-for-profit organizations who are looking to purchase housing. So I would just really ask for your support. My community is going through a major transformation. We need some secured, affordable housing, and this is a really great opportunity to secure some of that. And I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cuddle. I don't see any other names on the list. Is there a question? Oh, Councillor Morse.
I guess I would just like to speak in support of Councillor Cuddle's ask. Having seen a similar pattern, maybe not quite to the extent of what's happening in her district, but also in Fairview, we're losing the older affordable housing. These buildings are being either purchased and consolidated into larger lots with larger apartment buildings, or they're being renovated with the rents sometimes doubling. I hear from people who can no longer afford to live in a neighborhood they've lived in a part of the city they've lived in for a long time because of this continual turnover of the housing. It's very difficult to economically hang on to this housing. I mean, the Nova Scotia Housing Trust has purchased a few buildings in my district, and they are very dedicated to renovating these buildings in a way that nobody is evicted, and they're committed to keeping the rents similar to the way they have been, but it still costs money to renovate and maintain these buildings. So it's not the most it's not the most profitable thing you could do, for sure, and there are only a few groups willing to take on this work. So I think if they are coming forward, and we seem to have gaps in our programs that we're going to be working to fix over the next year or two, that in the meantime we might support this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. Councillor Gillis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, we're currently going through budget discussions, and we talk about core services versus non-core services. I don't think that we should be in the housing market, and I don't really consider this core. I think this is a different level of government, and I just cannot support putting $1.5 million into a purchase of a building. Sorry.
150,000 is the ask amount. Councillor Gillis.
Misspoke.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Cleary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So if we did decide to move this to Regional Council to recommend $150,000, and Regional Council said, yeah, let's do that, does the money come out of the monies we have set aside from the feds for the HAF, or do we have to find the money from somewhere else? And how much is in that HAF pot at the moment?
I see Aaron is coming down to speak to the question. Thank you, Aaron.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, and through you to the councillor. The intention here would be that the money would come from our federal HAF funds. We have a bit more discretion with those funds, and we do have a time limit to use it. It all has to be spent by October 2027. We're just waiting on our third installment of HAF funds, which would amount to a little less than 20 million. We have 2 of those installments left if we meet all of our obligations under the program. And typically we would set aside the priorities for that funding through the budget and business planning process. So that wouldn't be coming until closer to April. But we do have a surplus of those funds still remaining from last year. So we do have an opportunity to use those funds.
Okay, and it's completely eligible for the HAF because we're putting it to affordable housing. I mean, I would love to see us actually create new affordable housing, but I'm also quite cognizant of the fact that, to Councillor Cuddles or Deputy Mayor Cuddles' point, you know, we're losing more affordable housing more often now than we were a few years ago, and so you know, given that we have the funds available, I'm happy to support this and move it forward. Because that's partly why we signed up for the Housing Accelerator Fund in the first place. I mean, again, I'd love to see creation of new units, but the retention of units is also important. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cleary. Vice Chair St. Amand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm eager to provide an opportunity to rescue some affordable housing as well. I'm just going to ask a question of clarification because I had thought, based on what I read, that the money coming out of the Housing Accelerator Fund would only happen were we to reject the recommendation and move an alternative. So I just want to be clear on what's the source of funding if we go ahead with the recommendation, or if we look to provide them with funds. Is it specifically that we reject the recommendation to not provide the funding as it's been asked? We then have to propose the alternative in order to pull the money from HAF. Is that how this is all meant to work?
Yes, that's right. I think that's alternative one in the staff report would be to use the half funding.
Okay. So would we then have to defeat the motion as is and then come back with the alternative?
Yes, Councillor St. Amand.
Okay.
Vice Chair St. Amand.
Just wanted to be clear on the process.
I see no other names on the list. Would you indulge me to ask a question from the chair? So my question is, in the report, should the funding go and Rooted be able to acquire this building, that they will probably apply for the nonprofit tax relief? Do we have an idea of what that amount might be? Because then that will be also an annual ask. But I'm just curious about what that amount might be, because that's the only part of this that would probably affect, you know, our tax and budget discussions.
Thank you,
Our
Madam.
CFO.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. We're really not in a position to give an estimate of what that could be without having a tangible assessment.
Okay.
But to your point, under our program, they would be eligible.
Great.
For relief.
Good. Thank you very much. Oh, and John Traves has a comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just weigh in. And looking at the alternative, the normal course would be for Audit and Finance to recommend an amount. I see in here that the suggestion is leave that to Regional Council. Given the request is $150,000, Audit and Finance may wish to consider an amount that they would recommend to Regional Council as a starting point, and that would be informed by the balance available in the half funding, I would suggest.
So, see no further names on the list. We can call for the question on the motion that is on the floor. If it is defeated, then we will come back with an amended version of alternative one, should the committee choose. So, question? Are you ready? Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand. All those opposed, nay. The motion is defeated. Thank you. So a member of the committee, would you choose to make the motion? Councillor Morse, thank you.
So I move that Audit and Finance recommend to Regional Council to approve a grant in the amount determined by Regional Council and authorize the Chief Administrative Officer to negotiate and execute a contribution agreement with Rooted using half funding. Regional Council could also amend any terms and conditions attached to the funding.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Cleary. There was a comment by Mr. Traves. If you would like to put the amount in.
Sure. Yeah. I thought it said in the amendment that for an amount determined by Regional Council. I thought that
It
covered
did.
Okay.
Mr. Traves said because the request in the report was 150,000 if we wanted to put that
Oh,
in
okay.
the motion.
Sure. Certainly. Yeah.
So it would be approve a grant in the amount of 150,000 to Regional Council?
And authorize. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Dorothy, do you have that edit? If you would like to put it on the screen, that would be great when you're ready. Good. Hmm? So we just need someone to approve the amendment with the dollar value in there. Show of hands for the amendment. Carried. Pardon? And then we'll vote on the motion as presented on the screen. Dorothy, for those not present, maybe we could put it on the, great, thank you. Yep. Councillor Hensby.
I just had a question, Madam Chair, in regards to the number 2 motion, direct staff following the forthcoming housing strategy to explore options to support acquisition for use of affordable housing. We had our Harbour East Community Council had our discussions yesterday with the consultants that are doing the report and stuff, and we talked about one of the options and some of the various questions was trying to maintain the existing housing, affordable housing opportunities. I'm kind of wondering, defeating that motion earlier this afternoon, does that preclude that report still going forward by the consultants? Because I think that's going to be some of these discussions for the other community councils to discuss.
Councillor, are you speaking of the motion that was just defeated here at this committee?
Part 2, yes, part 2.
No, we certainly intend to continue to explore means to protect existing affordable housing through the strategy, and one of our key drivers in completing the strategy will be to look for ways to build capacity within the nonprofit sector.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hensby. Councillor Morse.
Just a small thing. I think there's one word missing from the revised motion. Approve a grant, yeah, of 150,000.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Morse.
Question?
Question has been called. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Opposed, nay. The motion is carried. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll move now to 13.2.4, which is the Orenda Canoe Club request for HRM funding. Again, we do not have a presentation with this report, but we do have some staff present. Trish Higbee, Community Facility Partnership Coordinator, and Andy Conrad, Manager of Community Partnership, available to answer any questions. We have a member of the committee that would like to put the motion on the floor. Councillor Hensby, thank you.
The motion is that the Audit and Finance Standing Committee recommend Halifax Regional Council approve a one-time financial contribution of $50,000 to run the Canoe Club in the fiscal 2025-2026 to be funded from the HRM Opportunities Reserve, with such contribution to be contingent upon Orenda Canoe Club's execution of a contribution agreement consistent with Administrative Order 2019-007 ADM, outlining terms, conditions, and reporting requirements governing the financial contribution.
Seconder, Councillor St. Amand. Councillor Hensby.
Madam Chair, I'm very pleased to see this report come back with this recommendation. It's going to assist the Canoe Club greatly in regards to trying to finish our facilities. This will help trigger some of the federal infrastructure dollars that they can now get access to if they get this grant approved by council, and it'd be greatly appreciated by the community at large. Thank you.
See no other names on the list. We call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is 13.2.5, increase to project number CBE 240005, structural fire training prop. Again, there's no presentation, but Darren Young, Manager of Facility Growth, and Chief Dave Meldrum are available to answer any questions. Councillor Hensby will put the motion on the floor for us again. Thank you.
Thank you. That the Audit and Finance Standing Committee recommend Regional Council, 1, approve the additional $1,500,000 net HST included in debt financing. 2, increase the 2025-26 capital budget project number CE 240005, structural fire training prop by $1,500,000 net HST included. 3, award RFP 2025-0185 design build fire training facility to the highest scoring bidder, Berg Construction Group, at a cost of $3,001,364 net HST included, and funding from CE 240005 structure fire training prop is outlined in the financial contribution section of the staff report dated October 1st, 2025.
Thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Gillis. Thank you. Councillor Hensby.
My only question is, where is this being built at? I'm trying to picture it in my head, building this kind of apparatus and stuff. It's going to be causing smoke and concern and stuff in the neighborhood. So I just want kind of curious of where it's going to be built. I don't know if it's going to be in Night Ridge or somewhere. So,
Chief Meldrum, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the councillor. Councillor, this is intended to be built up at our Knightsbridge facility. I think you're familiar with that facility on the far side away from the residences. This will be entirely a propane-fueled fire simulation center. Therefore, it won't impact the residents that surround our training site.
Thank you, Councillor Hensby. Councillor Morse.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm familiar with this. I attended one of the training sessions there and saw a previous group using the existing one. So I'm wondering what, if this doesn't go ahead, like what gap is it filling? Like what is the need for this, since there is already something similar in place at Knightsbridge? And also, how did the original estimate, how was it so far off?
Thank you for the question. Through you, Madam Chair. First of all, the gap that it fills is significant. The trailer that you'll be familiar with, it's about 40-foot long trailer, 8 feet wide, one level. There is a second level. It's very, very small. It is deficient for sound firefighter training in a number of ways. First and foremost, there's one small fire in there. It's not very challenging for crew evolutions. It's too small to practice the hose management techniques that fire crews need. If I may, if you imagine this building that we're sitting in now, this is a 3-story building with an interior stairwell. To advance a hose line to the 3rd floor, to the 2nd floor, and the 1st floor for search, rescue, and fire attack is a skill set. And that needs to be practiced in a team orientation. It's not a skill set that those firefighters working together can practice in such a small and unrealistic simulation. In addition, due to the size of that simulator that we operate now, our new officers can't effectively practice incident management for multiple companies. So if you have more than one fire crew on scene, they're working in different parts of the building, it's a skill set that needs to be practiced and developed to manage that activity, to keep control of the crews, to direct them, and to maintain accountability for their safety and presence. It's also a small trailer, therefore firefighters practicing with aerial ladders and ground ladders, so aerial ladders on a truck or ground ladders that we carry, it's impractical on the unit that we have now. So those are some of the features that are deficient. There are a couple others. The interior configuration doesn't really replicate residential nor commercial occupancies. So that is a summary. How did we get it so wrong? Well, the estimates were done some time ago, of course, and building a fire simulation center is a bit atypical. It's not a standard building. So we didn't understand what, local construction companies obviously might charge us for this. There certainly have been inflationary pressures in this time as well. And certainly when we looked at the instructor needs, and when they told us they need an interior stairwell for vertical training, when they need long hose stretches, when they need more than one fire, they need several fires, all that contributed to a design that cost us what you see in front of you in the report today.
Okay, thank you. And perhaps my memory is faulty, but I thought there was a structure at Knightsridge that was 2 or 3 stories tall, not just a trailer, but 2 or 3 stories tall with stairs, and teams were using that. Is that not in place still, or?
Through you, Madam Chair. There is in the far corner of our about 4.25 acre lot up there, there is a wooden tower that's on essentially telephone poles, and it does have an interior stairwell. It is in no way replicates a stairwell you'd find in any kind of building in our city nowadays. It's quite tight. That training facility is the original training facility from the former city of Halifax when they had 6 fire stations. And there have been no real significant infrastructure upgrades there since this municipality was formed.
Great. Okay. That's very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. Councillor Gillis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And with misspeaking in the last motion there, I apologize. I had the two numbers side by side in the last motion. That's where the 1.5 million came from. I apologize for the confusion. Thank you, Acting Chief Meldrum. Most of my questions were answered by the previous councillors there speaking, but the one I have remaining is, has the province given any indication, now that they've closed the Waverley Firefighting School, are they going to build possibly a new one or open a new training center, and are they given any indication that they would include us in that integration? Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor. I must speak carefully in response to your question, if you don't mind, because I don't represent those other agencies. It's my understanding that the Nova Scotia Firefighter School is not closed. The province of Nova Scotia announced that they were severing their relationship with that agency. That had a financial implication for the Nova Scotia Firefighter School in terms of a couple funding streams. But it's my understanding that the Nova Scotia Firefighter School still exists. I can tell you that there's a lot of discussion right now in the province of Nova Scotia about the fire service generally and firefighter training specifically. You may know that a fire service governance review report has been issued and is on the street, as we say. The province of Nova Scotia is aware that the fire service requires some oversight in a number of areas. Bill 81 has been introduced in the House and will be read next year, where we expect to see provincial guidance on all things fire service. So that'll include possibly an office of the fire commissioner, possibly regulations around the conduct of how you run your fire department, possibly new regulations around your training and your certification requirements for firefighters. None of that is standardized in our province today. The word on the street, if you will, around training is that there's a strong desire for more facilities, including regional facilities, so that career and volunteer firefighters, particularly in regions of Nova Scotia, don't have to travel so far. It's not clear where a central or regional facilities would be or who would operate them at this time.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. Like, would it make sense to hold off and wait as a common facility, maybe? Anyway, just throwing it out there.
Thank you, Councillor Gillis. Councillor Vice Chair St. Amand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wondering what's the anticipated lifespan for this reinvestment in the training facility? I mean, it sounds like this is an overdue modernization of the training facility to match up to the realities that our firefighters face every day now. I mean, certainly when we're talking about the densification of our municipality, it sounds like the specs that you're looking for here are meant to move us in the direction that's more reflective of the realities that our firefighters face. How long will this last? I mean, how long does it match up to the realities that we anticipate 5 years, 10 years, 15 years out?
Through you, Madam Chair, and Darren Young is in audience, so if I make a technical error, I'll ask my colleague to back me up on this. But from a replication perspective, we think that the layout and design of the simulation, because it's essentially what this building will be, will remain relevant and current for a considerable period of time, easily 20, 25 or more years. The type of construction material that we're hoping for, this cement construction, is very important in terms of durability. As is outlined in the report, there are alternates, and it would be our thinking that those alternates would be a decade, a little more, depending on how much wear, tear, and treatment they got. Whereas with this tilt-up and cast concrete construction, there's no reason this building shouldn't have a 20 or 25 year useful lifespan, and perhaps beyond that.
Okay, terrific. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor St. Amand. Deputy Mayor Cottle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I had similar questions to Councillor Gillis around waiting for this review, the fire service governance review, and looking at a regional training center as a way to cut, well, not to cut costs, because the costs are going to be the cost, but to share the costs. I mean, it's not an insignificant ask. It's a tremendous investment. Understand the investment, and I totally understand the need for training, especially as we see our city change and grow, and particularly in our building types and forms, with the high rises and the multi-units. But we're a province of just over 1 million people. That's not a significantly large population. And, there is opportunity to collaborate with other fire agencies and services, with the province, with municipalities, because it doesn't make sense that every municipality, build its own center. I also assume that different centers could have different focuses, that, ones that are maybe more regionally based, it would serve one purpose, but a central one, which seems to me would belong in Halifax or near Halifax, would be providing training that might not be available in other parts of the province on a regular basis. I just see so much opportunity for collaboration here. I don't know what the model is. Could we rent out this facility to other fire services down the road? Is there a financial model for recouping some of the costs? These are all questions I have about the financial viability of this at this time, especially knowing what's coming down the pipe there with the review next year. My other question has to do with the environment, and I'm just wondering, with the training facility, what environmental protections are in place? I believe that there's a class action suit going on right now in the country in regards to a buildup of toxic forever chemicals that are commonly related to fire training centers, where over years and years and years of training, this builds up. It affects water tables. It affects, surrounding brooks and streams and lakes. And I'm wondering, with this facility, is that being taken into consideration, and how are those concerns being mitigated?
Through you, Madam Chair. Deputy Mayor, thank you for the questions. Let's talk about cost. Certainly, this is a significant investment for the municipality to make, and it's an investment that we respectfully submit is due. There is risk in delay. for us. Right now, we have the trailer unit that was talked about before. It was purchased in 2009 and has been doing all of the work of all our volunteer and career firefighting and incumbent practice firefighting for all those years. It's at end of life. In fact, the manufacturer no longer supports it.
Yeah. Just, do you ever use the fire school out in like Ferguson's Cove, Herring Cove area, the military one?
Many years ago, we did joint training with the Naval Damage Control School at York Redoubt, I believe is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And that was mainly to give our structural firefighters some awareness of shipboard firefighting. But below deck shipboard firefighting is not an undertaking that we do today. And their configuration, it's very highly replicative. It's very realistic for a warship.
Okay, sorry, I just had to add that in there. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. So delay is risk. If our current simulator fails and we can't repair it, we're going to have a serious deficit in our ability to recruit firefighters and turn them into ready for service firefighters. Certainly collaboration with the province, with regions is of interest to us. And I know that Commissioner Moore and the team, there are some high-level discussions with the Department of Emergency Management in the province of Nova Scotia, but that is some time away. And I'm not sure how long we can go without having a guaranteed ability to provide this municipality the firefighters that we require for community safety. The longer we delay, there is, of course, risk of escalating costs. A joint facility, if and when one exists, may have scheduling challenges. Our site is busy. When we have both career and recruit classes on, then all spring and all fall, we run that site 6 days a week. And in fact, Wednesdays, which are supposed to be a day off for our career recruits, sometimes are practice days. So for 20 weekends, 10 and 10, let me get that right. They're 5 and 5. 10 weekends of spring and fall is pure firefighting for volunteers. For 4 months, spring and fall, our career firefighters are engaged in a rotational training that includes firefighting. So what am I saying? I'm saying sharing a facility, and we did this with the Nova Scotia Firefighter School for a few years, is very, very difficult because when there's another client in there, or there's another priority in there, we all got to sort that out. So that's a challenge. Doesn't make things impossible, but it's a challenge. Another challenge is a regional center may not be proximate to our downtown areas. Why does that matter? Well, right now, this site facility that we're proposing is close enough that our current firefighters who need to practice their skills, they need to run their fire trucks and pump the water and run the hose lines and raise the ladders. If, say, this site was proximate to the airport or perhaps, 30, 40, 50 minutes or more away from downtown, this would really inhibit our ability for on-duty firefighters to practice. So that's a concern that we would have as well. Certainly, we're open to having other fire departments come to our site. In fact, we're having some loose conversations right now with some good folks in East Hants who are saying, hey, would we be able to use your current existing simulator in site? And we're saying, yeah, if we can pull the scheduling, we could absolutely do that. So if we are able to put this building in place, there may well be a revenue generating stream available to us, and we're open to that. With regard to environmental protection, yes, this site will be clean. The only product used for burning is propane, which burns clean. We do use a theatrical fog, so fake smoke, if you will, and that is non-toxic, and it's completely safe, and we use a lot of it now, and it doesn't disrupt the environment or the neighbors. Our runoff water will be clean. There will be no products of combustion, and there'll be nothing in it. And I'm glad that you raise the concern around PFAS chemicals, because it's a big concern for us. That predominantly comes from the use of firefighting foams. A lot of, especially your older foams, are full of those forever chemicals. We eliminated the use of those on our training grounds near a decade ago and will not use them at the site.
Right, good to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cottle. Vice Chair St. Amand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I managed to jot down all the notes that I wanted to use to ask these questions. So, is the site that we have now, not the facility that's there, but the physical location, is that is it only of the size that will support a single departmental use? The reason I ask is I'm wondering whether or not if the urgency that has been expressed at replacing our own training facility, could that then accelerate plans with EMO to develop a regional facility that dovetails with what we're doing here, so that we get financial participation, but also potentially a scaling up of the facility? Because to your point, what you're planning on building at this location may not be especially useful to have shared among multiple departments because of scheduling conflicts, et cetera. But if the entire facility were to be scaled up and it itself became the regional center, would that be a difference maker, or would that physical site not be able to support a scaling up of that magnitude?
Through you, Madam Chair, if I understand the question, and please clarify where required, you're asking if the current Knightsridge site, which is about 4¼ acres, would host a regional type of hub. The challenge in that space is twofold. One is physical size, and one is how many special simulations that you'll have. So it's quite small. In fact, one of our challenges is to do driver training for slow maneuvering, is what we call it, and fire suppression at the same time is bad practice, because you've got firefighters walking around where people are learning to drive trucks. There's an obvious safety implication there. So one of the measures we're looking at is how much driver training will we be able to do in the future on the grounds of the future Fire Station 1 in Bedford. But even with a large site, it would have to be designed in such a way to allow, again, multiple agencies to use simulation. So if you have I visited Memphis, Tennessee a lot of years ago. They have a wonderful, wonderful site. They have 10 acres and they have an oval, looks like a racetrack, and a large driver training area. But one of their bottlenecks is their burn building. They have a beautiful, significant burn building. But when the firefighters want to fight fires and the police want to go in there and do emergency response team training at the same time, that's where their conflict is. So I think any future design is going to have to be thought about very carefully with regard to the traffic jam. Everyone wants to train in spring and fall. Training in winter due to freezing conditions is generally unpopular. Training in the heat of summer due to risk of student heat injury is pretty unpopular too. Weekends and evenings are especially important for our volunteer firefighters. I don't know if that answer is helpful.
Well, sort of. I think what I'm hearing is that there's an inherent risk of duplication in what's proposed for Knightsridge versus what might be a regional training center, but that may be unavoidable if the Knightsridge Center couldn't possibly host enough stuff in order to be itself a regional training center. Is that correct?
Yes, and we're very conscious that duplication implies cost, which is very important, without question. But redundancy also provides a benefit. So even in our current state today, we have no redundancy. So when a future training center, there is a future project in the HRM capital long-term plan, as well as whatever might happen regionally with the province. But in all those things, we would see Knightsridge as being a very important place for our incumbents or our in-service firefighters to go and train and hone their skills. Right now, we get constant complaints from our in-service firefighters because they say, we want to go train. Well, you can come up after supper, maybe. That's it. There's no other time that they can practice their skills.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Vice Chair St. Amand. Whoops. So not seeing any other names on the list, if I might, I've got a few questions as well. My biggest concern is really whether or not this decision is premature based on the fire service review and what might be happening. The new Minister of Emergency Management has spoken quite a lot, actually, about provincial response in both policing and in fire. So I'm curious about that, or not curious. So I'm concerned about whether or not we're being premature and spending money before we need to. The other question that I might have is, in the report, it does say if this isn't approved, you could look at reducing the size of the training structure. You could decrease the number of simulated fires, exploring alternatives to concrete construction. I was involved in building a concrete tilt-up, and they're not inexpensive. So there are other options that sometimes people are using. Were any of those considered when it looked that there wasn't enough money in the budget that was provided? Were these looked at to say, okay, maybe we'll do this? Or was it just more like, no, this is what we want to build, so here's what it's going to cost? And in the costing, there is one line item that is optional rooftop ventilation prop, and it says optional, and it's like $70,000. Why is that optional? So those are my questions. Thank you, Chief Mulder.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try to answer all your questions. Absolutely. Again, the uncertainty introduced by what will happen in the province of Nova Scotia is a factor. I note that, our project started before those conversations were ever initiated. So we certainly didn't see that coming, and we don't know where that will go. So there's a high level of uncertainty with regard to what will happen and indeed when it will happen. So, I feel there's some urgency that we replace the current fire simulation machine that we have now as it is at end of life and may not be serviceable for all that much longer. With that said, we certainly talked about the other construction methods. It's in the report. It wasn't only that we feel that the concrete solution is the best, most durable, most realistic, and most effective from a training perspective. Also that we're cognizant of we're in 2 procurement processes. So we have a contract with a vendor for 4 fires. And I'll have to go back to staff and say, okay, what happens if we don't need 4 fires anymore? And we're also in another procurement process with the bidders and the preferred bidder for the building itself. So those elements led us to believe that we should seek your direction and then determine what next steps are appropriate.
Thank you, Chief Mulder. And seeing no other names on the list, is a question to be called? Question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Opposed, nay. Motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Chief Mulder. And now we go to 13.2.6, the second quarter 2025-26 financial report. Tiffany Smith, the Manager of Service Delivery, and Dave Harley, Director of Financial Management, are with us. They'll be providing a presentation and answering any questions for us. So we will have our presentation, and then we'll put the motion on the floor. Welcome.
Thanks. All right. So yeah, going to walk you through the second quarter update this afternoon. So starting with our projected position coming into the end of September is a surplus of just under 600,000. And just as a reminder, when we came back here last quarter, we were projecting a surplus of just over 200,000. So overall, we've remained fairly flat. However, there's been some fluctuations between the business units and fiscal. So just to quickly summarize the most material items that make up that projected bottom line. A decrease in fuel. The average price per liter that we've been experiencing has been lower than what we budgeted, so that's 3.8 million. Savings from HST and compensation changes in fiscal is 3.5 million. Decrease in the RCMP contract costs this year, mainly due to delays in filling new positions. They'd been estimated to be filled in September, and the majority are looking to be starting in December and January. That's 1.1 million. Decrease in expected heritage and affordable housing grants is 500,000. So the heritage grants, that's based on lower uptake for the program over the past few years. And then the affordable housing grants, there's a prioritization of using external and reserve funding over operational funding. Decrease in operating costs, net of decreases in revenues related to the extended producer responsibility changes that are coming in December. That's 400,000. And then an increase in parking revenue based on trend is 300,000. So then offsetting those increases is increase in various external contracts for 3.2 million. So that's across the business units. Some of the larger ones would be in public works for snow contracts, parks for field grooming, janitorial, Greenfoot and RBC Center. Decrease in investment income, net of an increase in interest on tax, is 1.8 million, and the main driver there is lower cash balances than expected and lower interest rates. Estimated deficit related to a recreation contract is 1.5 million. Decrease in secondment and extra duty recoveries in police is 1.4 million. That's lower uptake and continued staffing challenges driving that. Increase in various building related costs is 700,000, and that's mainly aging infrastructure having emergency replacements and repairs. And then an increase in compensation and benefits across the organization is 600,000. So that would be our estimate combined for the business units coming in over what was budgeted for vacancies this year. So next, risks and opportunities. I won't spend a lot of time on this because we haven't had any changes from the last time that we came to give this update. So impacts of severe weather-related events coming into the winter season, fluctuations in commodity costs, global trade impacts, lack of uncommitted reserve balances, and then unplanned project requests. Next, taking a look at district capital funds. So the total budget for these accounts is 2.7 million. Spent or committed to the end of September is 1.5 million, and that leaves 1.2 million available. And the graph here shows by district the remaining available funds at the end of the second quarter. Okay, so next, district activity funds. So total budget combined 72,000, spent or committed to the end of September 35,000, and that's 36,900 available to spend to the end of the year. And again, same district showed by district available remaining funds. Recreation area rates, 22 area rate accounts as of the beginning of the year, 1 million carry forward. Revenues earned to September 30th was just under 500,000, and expenses to the same time period was just over 900,000, leaving a carry forward projected at September 30th of just under 600,000. Next report is for the reserves. So opening balance at the beginning of the fiscal year was 478 million. Projected closing balance at the end of the fiscal year is 374 million. And then if we look forward to 29-30, our projected uncommitted balance is just under 70 million. Next is aged accounts receivable. Total gross accounts receivable as of September 30th is 486 million. And just of course noting that's a larger number than what we would have brought last quarter, but that's driven by the tax bill that would be issued. So the vast majority of that is sitting in your current. Next, capital projection summary. So net budget available before expenditures at September 30th was 736 million. Actual expenditures to the end of September 30th, just under 150 million. Projected expenditures to the end of the fiscal, just under 350 million, and projected work to progress into next fiscal is 220 million. And full details are in attachment 8 with by project. Expenses for reportable individuals for the 3-month period ended September 30th. There was 15,840 in expenditures, and the full details are available in attachment 9. And then finally, council approvals up to September 30th that are coming outside of the budget process. So total new estimated operating cost is 16 million, and total reserve deposits net of withdrawals is 14.6 million. So just noting those numbers would not include any in-camera decisions. And then the biggest factor there would be the increase in the reserve contributions. So that is the end of the presentation this afternoon, and happy to address any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Tiffany. So Councillor Hensby would like to put the motion on the floor.
Certainly that the Audit Finance Standing Committee forward the second quarter 2025-26 financial report to reach the council for their information.
A seconder, please. Councillor Morse.
Madam Chair,
Comments?
if I may, I'm getting some questions and emails from constituents trying to understand how this EPR, this Extended Producer's Responsibility, is going to kick in next week. how they're supposed to become responsible for the recycling programs. They're asking, well, why we're paying our taxes? We got a tax bill due the end of October. We're paying for the full budget service. How does this new EPR going to fit into the budget process? Are the producers going to be paying us for the collection of the materials and stuff, or are they processing it? Like, how does it come off the so-called taxpayer's burden and go to EPR?
Dave?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. So, and I have a high level understanding of this, so I won't get into a lot of the details, but what my understanding is, so we're basically bringing, we have the facility. It's our facility. We're going to be leasing it to them to undertake a lot of this work, and then paying them a fee as part of that. So we have certain revenues and expenses that we would have currently, which are now coming off of our books and being replaced by a lower expense that we're going to be paying this group. So it's costing us less now that we're no longer having to do the processing ourselves. We're saving that expense and then paying this group to do some of that work. Where at the same time we're also getting we would have had some tipping fees in that as revenues that are coming off our books, being replaced in part by a lease cost that we're getting from them to lease this facility. And that, so the net impact on HRM though is a decrease to our overall responsibility for this for processing these materials.
Okay, just when it comes to regional council, I'm sure a lot more people have the same questions come next week. So,
Thank you, Councillor Hensby. Councillor Morse.
Thank you. Just wondering if you could say a little bit more about the deficit in transit related to operator overtime. At what point does that become, problematic? At what point would it be much better to hire people rather than rely on overtime?
Through you, Madam Chair. It's a very good question. I think what we find with overtime is it really depends on the group that's doing it. So in this case, where it's transit, you're never looking to have it come forward as overtime. So there is constantly look to be hiring within that transit group. They do quite a bit of hiring throughout the year. I think part of the issue is that they do have a fairly large current level of vacancy. So it's trying to make up that backlog, as well as any efforts that are made to go further or expand that service. You have to kind of get that hiring in place. But in order to have the buses running and that, you do need to sometimes make that up if there's shortages, if there's sick time, if there's anything like that. You do kind of have to make that up with overtime. So it's never the position I think that you want to be in at that point in time, but sometimes it's a necessary thing to do in order to be able to maintain that the service at the levels that you're trying to maintain them at. So obviously, of course, they are trying to hire. They are continually in that kind of hiring phase and bringing through new operators, but it takes time to make up that shortfall. So that'll continue for some time, but it's something they are working on.
Yeah, I believe we helped hire a specific HR person to try to address some of the issues in transit, but perhaps that hasn't, that's not showing up yet on the books.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, there was an HR business partner that was specific to transit that came through as part of last year's budget. That position, I believe that's in place now, but it will, like I said, just based on the amount of backlog they had in terms of some of that vacancy, it will take time for that to come to fruition.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. Councillor St. Amand, or Vice Chair St. Amand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Similar question, although it's not highlighted in the report, and that is, we've seen not only operator overtime or overtime within Halifax Transit, but we do have big numbers of overtime as it applies to police and fire as well. But those are not highlighted as being reasons for any level of deficit. Is it because those came in at expectations and therefore are not highlighted as any kind of impact to our books at the moment?
I'd say we only highlight the most material items. At this point, police is actually has an overall surplus in their compensation, so they're actually like saving more than they're spending in overtime costs. And at this point, fire, that's not the main driver of their smaller deficit, so we just didn't end up including it as like a bigger item to highlight.
Okay, so more so for a question, more a question for me to try to address when speaking with our HR folks, because it has been highlighted in our workforce report year over year, and the number doesn't seem to be going down at all. And so I'm wondering what kind of strategy we can use to get a handle on that as well, since it clearly impacts our budget in a big way when collected together. Okay, thank you.
Just to add to that, because Tiffany's right, it's we are highlighting kind of the biggest variances, and I think it's just confirm you are correct that we would have had a higher budget in place for the overtime in those groups, and that's why, yes, it's still a significant amount, but it's not a significant variance over what was planned at the start of the year.
So yeah, right. So it's the variance that you're pointing out here. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair St. Amand. See no other names. I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Opposed, nay. Motion is carried. Thank you very much, Tiffany. Thank you, Dave. So move on to item 14. Motions, there are none. In camera, there is none. Edit items, I did not see any. Any notices of motion? Seeing none, the date of our next meeting is December 10th, and we will ask for a meeting to adjourn at exactly 3 p.m. Thank you by Councillor Gillis. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.